In this video, let me take you down because I'm going to attempt to recreate the iconic Beatles style guitar tone, heard on many iconic albums such as Sgt. Pepper, Please Please Me and Abbey Road. This tone is just so recognisable and may just be the main reason behind the popularity of many old school 60s vintage emulation plugins. Here, I'm going to play an example tone of what I want to replicate. Now bear with me, this is ripped from the internet, so it's not the best quality. So this is the isolated guitar tracks from Getting Better 1969. From what I can depict from that piece of isolated audio, the tone is quite spanky, bright, present, clean, but with some subtle harmonic distortion. That's probably all a result of the amps, preamps, tape saturation they used on the original recording, but let's find out more. Now luckily, it being the Beatles, this period of recording was widely documented and I've found many research materials such as books, papers, video clips and forums on the internet to help me research and understand how such a sound was created and how I can find the most accurate resources so that I can recreate it too. George Harrison was using his Strat on the original recording, which is a much more expensive and better quality guitar than what I had, so that variable will be different in tonal quality. Please bear that in mind. So when recording, I used my bridge pickup to get a more twangy sound, as I'm assuming they would have done this also after listening to the track. And I read in the Complete Beatles Recording Sessions, the official story of the Abbey Road years, how the classic sound of the Beatles guitar was recorded in the studio. They usually played through some sort of Vox amp, as their manager, Brian Epstein, had a contract with Vox, so it was a staple in their arsenal and they were renowned for using them throughout their career. The amps used on the Sgt. Pepper sessions were a Vox Conqueror, Vox UL730, Vox 7120, Fender Showman Head, Fender Bassman Head, Samba Thunderbird Twin 50, MK2 and Vox UL4120 bass amp. Did you get all that? In my experiment, I will use Logic's preset amp called British Small Combo, which is said to be based on a Vox AC30, so we're getting a bit closer there. So here's a little bit more info, just in case you were worried I wasn't going to cover it all. In Here, There, Everywhere, a cohesive book written by Beatles engineer Geoff Emerick about the band's recordings history, Emerick shared that he would often run guitars directly into the mixer desk and crank up the gain just barely into clipping. So the desk used for these recordings was the REDD desk at the Abbey Road Studios. This desk is the tool I'll mainly focus on to experiment and see how this desk coloured the sound and influenced the overall sound. Waves have created a plugin version, and this is the main tool I'm going to be focusing on to create this sound. And lastly, Emerick would put the guitar through a Fairchild 660 compressor, which was used during most of their sessions. It was an iconic smooth compressor of its day, and I have the emulation plugin version through Waves as well. And finally, we're going to send it through a J37 Abbey Road tape emulation plugin to get that vintage tape saturation all their recordings had. So as I said before, the main tool I'll be focusing on to make our sound is the Waves REDD plugin. So this plugin emulates the custom designed in-house mixing desk at Abbey Road Studios in the 60s, and there are 3 different versions, and this plugin covers all 3 different versions really. So Waves say that these desks were renowned for their silky smooth EQ curves, extraordinary warmth and lush stereo imagery. They also said that the EQ is potent, meaning it might be quite strong. This plugin has controls such as gain, which is the input gain, drive, which is a saturation amount, analog, which is a hiss and hum dial, and fade, which is the output gain control. So just going over it again, here is my signal chain demonstrating what I just explained. We're going to start with the Logic amp, which is a Vox copycat, through the REDD channel strip plugin, through the Puig compressor, which like I said is an emulation of the Fairchild compressor, and finally through that tape saturation. So let's see how this works out. So I'm just going to talk you through my plugin chain. Firstly, we're going to turn the amp on, and I'll show you the settings I have. I have the British Combo Small British amp, which is based on the Vox 30 amp, which I mentioned in my previous video. And you can set up like a virtual microphone here. I've used the 87 as it's like a almost cousin mic of the 67 that they would usually use in that era. And I've got it just off axis in front of the amp, but just a little further back, not too close. And in regards to the EQ on the amp, I have the bass up a little, high mids, high treble. Got a very slight reverb. And no effects and a little tiny touch of tremolo on it. So I'm just going to play the sound when it just comes through the amp on its own. I think it does need a little less reverb. Okay, and then next I'm going to send it through the REDD plugin. And I started here with the preset rhythm guitar. And usually the tone on that preset is very high, but there's some quite high-pitched frequencies at the high end of these recordings. So I cut it down a little bit. And I've got just ever so slightly cut the low tones. And then I've got the bass lift off. I'll show you the difference. Actually, I'm going to leave it with the bass lift. I think that works. The gain is up just slightly, up to about 8.3. Just up the gain slightly. I've got a little bit of drive going, not too much. Up the hum and hiss. And as you can see, it's just pushing the red here, which means I'm really pushing it into the desk, as Jeff Emerick would have done with the recordings. Next, I've got this Puig Child compressor, which is modelled after the Fairchild 660 compressor. And I set the preset to rock guitar, which actually landed me quite a good compressor. Kind of warms it up slightly, and then lastly it's going through the J37 tape emulation plugin. And here I haven't got any delay on it. The flutter's up slightly and the wow is up slightly, but I don't want it to do too much. I don't want it to warp the original sound. Noise level's up a little bit just to have the authentic noise that would come along with recording analog. I'm just going to play that for you. I think that needs to come down a little bit. And actually, looking through it, I think there's some drive that's just too much. And I'm just going to turn them all off so you can hear it originally, and then I'm going to turn them all back on again to show the difference. There's some saturation and distortion in there that I don't like, and I'm just trying to work out which plugin that's coming from. It seems like it's coming from that high tone in the REDD, so I just turn it down slightly and it's a little bit more smoother, but I still like that drive and distortion in it because it does add to the authenticity of it. So I think it's coming through the amp but a little bit distorted, and then the RED is smoothing it out a little bit, same with the compressor and the J37. So that is my signal chain for my Beatles guitar tone.